Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into the work of Rene Descartes and his meditations on first philosophy.
Oh, yeah, Descartes.
We've got excerpts from the text ready to go.
Cool.
But don't worry, this isn't just going to be some boring academic exercise.
Right.
Descartes was thinking about some really fundamental questions
Yeah.
about knowledge and reality,
Uh-huh.
even like the existence of our own bodies.
It's crazy.
We're going to explore why his thinking was so revolutionary back then in the 17th century.
Yeah.
And we're going to see if his thinking is still relevant today and what you can take away from it.
Well, one of the most fascinating things about Descartes is that he starts with this really radical idea.
Okay.
He wants to systematically doubt everything that he thinks he knows.
Really?
Yeah, and he uses this method of doubting to try and find a solid foundation for knowledge, something he can be absolutely certain about.
So it's like he's demolishing a building in order to start from scratch. He's not just questioning little things. He's going after some of our most basic assumptions about the world.
Right.
So where does he even begin with this whole doubt thing?
He starts with our senses.
Okay.
We rely on our senses, sight, hearing, touch, to tell us about the world.
Right.
But Descartes points out that our senses can be fooled.
Oh, yeah.
Think about optical illusions or times when you've misjudged distances in the dark.
Yeah, I see what you mean. We've all had those moments where our senses play tricks on us.
Right.
But surely not everything we perceive is an illusion, right?
Well, that's exactly what Descartes wants to figure out.
Okay.
He even takes it a step further and asks, how can you be absolutely certain that you're not dreaming right now?
Wait, hold on. Are you seriously suggesting that I might be dreaming right this second?
Well, think about it.
How could we possibly know the difference?
I mean, the experiences we have in dreams,
Yeah.
they can feel incredibly real.
Yeah.
In fact, Descartes even uses an example from his own life. He says that he's often convinced that he's sitting by the fire in his dressing gown when he's actually lying in bed.
Okay, that does make you think twice about what's real.
Right.
But is there really no way to tell if we're dreaming?
Well,
Couldn't we just pinch ourselves or something?
Descartes admits that there are no foolproof methods to distinguish dreams from reality. And that's where he introduces this idea of an evil demon who might be manipulating our thoughts and perceptions.
An evil demon. That sounds like something straight out of a horror movie. So what exactly is this demon supposed to be doing?
Well, it's a thought experiment.
Okay.
Descartes is imagining a powerful being who could be deceiving us about the nature of reality.
Okay.
He's really pushing the boundaries of skepticism by asking, what if everything I perceive is a lie?
Wow. Okay. That's pretty heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's basically saying that we can't even trust our own minds.
Right.
So if we can't trust our senses or our thoughts, is there anything left that we can be certain about?
That is the million-dollar question, and it's precisely what Descartes sets out to discover in his meditations.
Okay.
He's trying to find a bedrock of certainty amidst all of this doubt.
So he's doubting literally everything,
Well,
even his own existence.
yeah.
How can he possibly move forward from there? Is there even a point if everything is potentially just an illusion?
Well, here's where Descartes' genius really shines through.
Okay.
He realizes that even in the face of this extreme doubt, there's one undeniable truth that emerges.
Yeah.
And that truth forms the foundation of his entire philosophy.
All right, I'm really curious. What's this undeniable truth that he discovers? This is where it gets really interesting, right?
Remember, he's already questioning the reality of the physical world, even
Okay.
his own body.
Uh-huh.
But there's one thing that the evil demon can't take away from him.
What's that?
The fact that he's doubting in the first place.
So by doubting, he proves something. That sounds almost paradoxical.
It is, but it's also kind of brilliant.
I'm on the edge of my seat here. What's the big reveal?
The act of doubting requires a doubter.
Okay.
And it's from this realization that Descartes arrives at his famous declaration, I think, therefore I am.
Wow, that's actually pretty profound.
It is.
He's saying that even if everything else is uncertain, the very act of thinking proves his own existence.
Exactly.
It's like a light bulb moment in the midst of all this philosophical darkness.
You got it. And this discovery of the thinking self of the I, this becomes the foundation for the rest of Descartes' philosophical system.
Cool.
It's the first principle,
Right.
the one unshakable truth upon which he can start to rebuild his understanding of knowledge and reality.
Okay. But if he's doubting the existence of his own body, what exactly is this I that's doing the thinking?
This is where Descartes draws a sharp distinction between the mind and the body.
Okay.
He sees the mind, or the soul, as he sometimes calls it, as a separate entity from the physical world.
Hold on. So he's saying that the mind is basically non-physical.
Yes.
That our thoughts and consciousness exist independently of our brains and bodies.
That's the essence of his argument.
Okay.
He calls the mind a thinking thing, and this really emphasizes its immaterial nature.
That's a pretty radical concept, isn't it? I mean, it goes against so much of what we take for granted about how our minds and bodies work together.
Absolutely. It was a bold departure from earlier philosophical traditions.
Wow.
And this separation of mind and body has had a huge impact on Western thought.
I bet.
And it raises all sorts of questions that we are still debating today.
This is already blowing my mind, and we're just getting started with Descartes.
I know, right?
So even though he began by doubting everything, he ultimately landed on this fundamental truth about the I, the thinking self.
Yeah.
And it's from this starting point that he's going to set out to explore the nature of reality and knowledge.
Exactly.
Okay.
And his exploration takes him into some fascinating territory, including the question of God's existence and the role of divine guarantees in our understanding of the world.
Yeah. Okay. I am definitely ready to dive deeper into that. I have to admit, when we started this, I was a little skeptical about how relevant a 17th century philosopher could be to my life. But this is already making me think about things in a whole new way.
That's the power of philosophy. It challenges our assumptions, and it pushes us to think more deeply about the world and our place in it.
For sure. I'm hooked.
Yeah.
Let's see where Descartes takes us next. All right, so we've established that Descartes starts by doubting practically everything. His senses, his dreams, even the world around him.
Yeah.
But then he arrives at this big aha moment with, I think, therefore I am, proving the existence of his own mind.
Right.
Where does he go from there?
Okay.
Does he just, accept that the physical world might be a total illusion?
Well, not exactly. Remember that evil demon who is potentially messing with our minds?
Yeah.
Well, Descartes doesn't just leave us hanging with that unsettling thought.
Okay.
He actually brings God into the picture.
Okay, now this is where I'm really intrigued.
Huh.
We go from doubting the existence of our own bodies
Right.
to suddenly talking about God. How does that fit in?
It's actually a key part of Descartes' argument. You see, he has this idea of God as a perfect and benevolent being.
Okay.
And because he sees himself as imperfect, he reasons that this idea of a perfect God couldn't have originated from within himself.
So he's basically saying that the very concept of God is so grand, so perfect, that it must have come from somewhere outside his own limited human mind.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like he's saying, I have this idea of perfection,
Yeah.
but I'm clearly not perfect myself.
Right.
So where'd this idea come from?
Yeah. Okay.
And for Descartes, the only logical answer is that this idea was implanted in his mind by God himself.
Okay, but even if we accept that logic, and I have to admit it's a pretty big leap, what does proving the existence of God actually do for Descartes? How does it help him address all those doubts that he started with?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. By establishing the existence of God, Descartes can start to rebuild his understanding of the world and validate the use of human reason.
Okay.
Remember how he was worried about that evil demon tricking us about the nature of reality?
Right. Yeah.
Well, he argues that because God is perfect and good, he wouldn't deceive us or allow us to be systematically misled about the world around us.
So God becomes like a sort of safety net for Descartes.
Yeah, you could say that.
Instead of this malicious demon controlling everything, we have this benevolent God who ensures that our senses and our reasoning abilities are fundamentally reliable.
Exactly. God acts as a guarantor of truth, you know?
Yeah.
By proving God's existence, Descartes can start to trust his own perceptions and judgments again.
Okay, I have to admit, I never thought of God as a way to justify, the scientific method.
Oh, yeah.
But it seems like that's what Descartes is getting at here, right?
Right.
He's saying that because God is good, we can trust our senses and our reasoning abilities to help us understand the world he created.
You've got it. Descartes lays the groundwork for what we now call the scientific revolution. By emphasizing reason and observation over blind faith or tradition, he opens up a whole new way of exploring and understanding the universe.
That's incredible. So Descartes starts with this radical doubt.
Right.
Questions everything we think we know.
Yeah.
And then ultimately arrives at this idea of God as a way to ground our knowledge and justify our pursuit of scientific truth.
Right.
It's a pretty wild intellectual journey.
It is. It's a testament to the power of human reason, even in the face of uncertainty and doubt.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why Descartes is considered one of the most important figures in the history of Western thought.
I'm guessing, though, not everyone was, like, thrilled with Descartes' ideas,
Yeah.
right? I mean, separating the mind and the body like that.
Yeah.
It seems like it could have some pretty big implications, especially for religious beliefs at the time.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
Descartes' philosophy was highly controversial,
I
and it sparked heated debates among theologians and philosophers.
Okay.
Some saw it as a threat to religious authority,
Oh, wow.
while others embraced it as a way to reconcile faith and reason.
So even centuries later, we're still grappling with the questions that Descartes raised.
Yeah.
What do you think, for someone listening right now, what's the most important takeaway from Descartes' Meditations?
That's a good question. I think one of the most valuable insights is that we don't have to blindly accept what we're told or what we perceive.
Right.
Descartes encourages us to question,
Yeah.
to analyze,
Yeah.
to use our reason to arrive at our own understanding of the world.
And that even in the face of uncertainty, there's a power in recognizing the limitations of our knowledge.
Exactly. And that's where the beauty of philosophy lies, isn't it?
Yeah.
It allows us to explore the big questions,
Yeah.
to challenge our assumptions, and to continuously refine our understanding of ourselves and the universe.
All right. I'm ready for more. Where do we go from here? What other groundbreaking ideas did Descartes come up with? You know, it's amazing how Descartes' ideas are still relevant today, centuries later.
I know, right?
We're still talking about the mind-body problem,
Yeah.
the nature of consciousness, all this stuff that he was dealing with back then.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like he was ahead of his time.
He really was.
What I find really fascinating is that Descartes' work wasn't just like some philosophical exercise.
Right.
This emphasis on reason and systematic doubt actually had a huge impact on the scientific revolution.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, by emphasizing these clear and distinct ideas,
Yeah.
Descartes basically provided this framework for scientific inquiry.
Okay.
So instead of relying on tradition or authority, scientists could now use reason and observation
Okay.
to understand the world around them.
It's like he gave us a new set of tools for figuring out the universe.
Exactly. And, his method of breaking down complex problems into smaller, more manageable parts,
Yeah.
that also had a huge influence on the way we do science.
Like how?
Well, think about how scientists design experiments today.
Okay.
They isolate variables, control conditions,
Yeah.
and focus on measurable results.
So this idea of systematic doubt, which, might seem kind of like purely philosophical,
Right.
actually had practical implications for science.
Exactly. And it's not just about science either.
What do you mean?
Well, this whole emphasis on critical thinking,
Yeah.
it's something we can all benefit from in our daily lives.
Okay, why is that?
Well, it encourages us to question our assumptions,
Uh-huh.
to look for evidence,
Right.
not just take things at face value.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. It's about being curious,
Yeah.
demanding proof,
Uh-huh.
and being willing to change your mind when presented with new information.
That's a really valuable skill in any field.
Oh, absolutely. Whether you're a scientist,
Right.
a business person, or just navigating the complexities of life.
For sure. It's almost like Descartes is giving us permission to question everything,
Yeah.
to not be afraid to challenge the way things are.
I think that's a great takeaway from our deep dive today. Descartes' Meditations remind us that knowledge is not something that we passively receive.
Right?
It's something that we have to actively construct.
Yeah, through reason and observation and critical thinking.
Exactly. And it really highlights the power of the human mind to understand itself
Mhm.
and the world around it.
And, even though Descartes was writing centuries ago,
Right.
his ideas are still so relevant in our modern world.
Yeah. I mean, think about the debates we have today about artificial intelligence,
Okay.
virtual reality,
Yeah.
the nature of consciousness.
Huh.
All of these topics touch upon those fundamental questions that Descartes was grappling with.
It really makes you realize that these big questions
Uh-huh.
about knowledge and reality and what it means to be human,
Yeah.
they're timeless
Absolutely.
and constantly evolving.
You got it.
So as you go about your day, try to channel a little bit of that Cartesian spirit.
I love it.
Question your assumptions, look for evidence, and don't be afraid to think for yourself. And who knows, you might just have your own I think, therefore I am moment. We'll catch you on your next deep dive.